Okay, hello, welcome everybody. Today I'm here with Robin and we're going to be working on St. Crispin's Day speech. I'm doing some sessions that I'll be sharing on YouTube and around the places just to give people a bit of a demonstration of what it's like to work with me, but also to work technically on a Shakespeare piece, because a lot of people don't know what goes into text work and what it's really like to pull apart features or even a scene in different ways. And I've got my group program coming up very soon in June. And so for people that want to work deeply, it's a 10-week intensive. That's coming up soon. You might want to jump on that. So I'll introduce Robin. I'll bring him up so we can have a little chat there. There we are on screen. Hi, Robin. How are you going?
Hi, Sarah. How are you? Good.
I'm very well. And I wanted to ask you, you were mentioning with St. Crispin's Day, you haven't done it for a while. Is there anything in particular that you want to achieve with it? Is there anything that kind of been, or in your own work where you feel like I would like to get to this level with it, or this bit has been bothering me, or anything that's a goal for either the piece or for yourself?
Great question. And the answer is yes. It occurs to me that there are a bunch of places in this where there is opportunity for physical, standing up and walking around and being involved. He's trying to, this is the mother of all uh, pep talks, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I can't imagine what it must have been like sitting there in the dark, uh, hearing him speak. It's just an extraordinary speech, but it requires a presence. You can imagine, well, lots of people, you can imagine Pacino being over the top with it and that sort of thing. And just
Yeah.
where um, that's maybe a redundant concept. Um, Pacino being over the top. But
It
anyway,
has this thing. Yeah, go
um,
ahead. Yeah.
um, and I am, confined in space. I'm just sitting here in my living room,
Mm,
and I
mm,
don't have any professional recording equipment at all. This is just using the
that's
camera on
fine.
my PC and so on. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
but so that is an aspect of it that I would like to work into my craft.
yeah.
So
Okay. Right. Yeah, okay. So some movement and kind of embodying it a little and maybe finding a little bit of balance between the big and the small and that kind of thing, finding the
yeah,
energy without feeling fake, that kind of thing, maybe might be something we can look at. Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I think they're really useful things to work on, because I mean, a lot of people have that struggle of they've only got a little bit of space in their house, for example, or they're not able to, run about shouting. So it's good to have those. Sometimes it's good to have those restrictions and find what works. And even I'll just throw out there for those, for people that might be filming self tapes. Sometimes it's difficult. You can't always be moving around a lot, or you might have trouble with the sound becoming very boomy if you're in a big space. So it is something that people have to navigate. So I think that's really very common that we're working around those things. Okay, so I'll put those in my head. Are you happy to go through with a bit of a reading or a performance of it to start us off, wherever you're at with it?
sure. That sounds great. And
Okay.
for those of you watching at home, Sarah had mentioned that since it's been so long since I've done this, I may cheat a little bit. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah, please do. Yeah, please do, because actually, oh, sorry, I cut you off. That I was just going to say that I say to people a lot, just stay on book for longer. The memorization thing sometimes just gets in the way when we're trying to really put the piece together. If we're also trying to think about the words it actually throws us off really going into it. So it's actually better just to practice with it, ideally on a script that you can kind of wave around, that you're not going to worry about dropping something. But absolutely, yeah, please don't feel worried about looking at the script. And yeah, I beg your pardon, I interrupted you. What were you going to say?
No. That's great. And as a matter of fact, for what it's worth, that's just very, it's kind and generous of you. And I suspect that a lot of people would like to know that that's the kind of person that you are. So I think that's great.
Thank you. That's a very nice thing to say. And well, that's my goal really, is to make that space where it is okay for you to be wherever you're at with it, because it is okay, and it's not me just faking it. It is okay to be wherever you're at with the speech. And there are always ways to move from where you are. So I'll pop myself on mute, Robin, and then just take a moment to get your head in it. And whenever you're ready, you can regale us.
So again, by the way, just for anyone who's not familiar with this, the piece actually starts out with somebody who is not Henry, with a commentary to which Henry is responding. Would that we now had but 1/10,000 of those men in England that do no work today. What's he that wishes so? Um, I thought that's who it was. What's he that misses so? My cousin Westmoreland. No, my fair cause. If we are marked to die, we are enough to do our country harm. And if to live, the fewer men, the greater share of honor. Um, God's will, I pray thee, um, wish not one man more. By Jove, I am not covetous for gold, nor care I who doth dine upon my um, treat. It yearns me not if men my garments wear. Such outward things dwell not in my desires. But if it be a sin to covet honor, I am the most offending soul alive. No, faith, my cuz. Um, no, faith, my cuz, wish not a man from England. God's peace. I would not lose so great an honor as one man more, methinks, would share from me for the greatest hope I have. Oh, do not wish one more. Rather proclaim it, Westmoreland, through my host, that he which hath no stomach to this fight, let him depart. His passport shall be made, and crowns for convoy put into his purse. We would not die in that man's company that fears his fellowship to die with us. This day is called the Feast of Crispin. He that outlives today and comes safe home will stand a tiptoe when this day is named, and rouse him at the name of Crispin. He that shall live this day and see old age shall yearly on the vigil feast his neighbors and say, tomorrow is St. Crispin's. Then shall he strip his sleeve and show his scars and say, these wounds I had upon St. Crispin's day. Old men forget, but all shall be forgot. But he'll remember with advantages what feats he did that day. Then shall our names, familiar in his mouth as household words, Harry the King, Bedford and Exeter, Warwick and Talbot, Salisbury and Gloucester, be in their flowing cups freshly remembered. Then this story shall the good man teach his son, and Crispian shall ne'er pass by from this day to the ending of the world, but we in it shall be remembered. We few, we happy few, we band of brothers, For he today that sheds his blood with me shall be my brother. Be he ne'er so vile, today shall gentle his condition. And gentlemen in England, now abed, will think themselves accursed they were not here, and hold their manhoods cheap, whiles any speaks that fought with us upon St. Crispin's day.
Yay. It's so great, isn't it? Really, it's hard not to feel it as you go through. Just
Even as you go through it, yeah.
it's
Even
really,
speaking, yeah.
that's it. It carries you, doesn't it? It does a lot of, it kind of does the work for you in a way because it's so stirring. I love it. I think I'm going to think a little bit this in that I reckon one of the things that people will struggle with the most that I see people struggle with the histories generally is that it's very hard to what Patsy Rodenberg, the vocal coach, calls people the text because there are so many different characters that are mentioned. You know, you've got Westmoreland, you've got Bedford, Exeter, Warwick, Talbot, Salisbury, Gloucester. There's so many people around them, and those people can kind of feel like nobody unless they can sound like just a jumble of names, unless you have maybe read some of the previous texts, unless you know a little bit about the history. And you might, Robin, but I think a lot of people don't. I think a lot of people come to this monologue, particularly, and they might read this play, but they won't have the full context. And these people, they are so important and they're all different. They all have different kind of personalities. And I think that's one of the biggest things I would say to anybody coming to this speech is to really remember that there are a bunch of people around him that mean different things to him, and that it's complex in that you're not just talking to a bunch of people, but you're talking to people that you know, people that you don't know, young people, old people. You're really got the people, the space around you. So I'd love to do a little exercise, and this will start to go into embodiment as well. But we can do it just sitting down or with just a little bit of space. I'd love you to go, and actually, you know what? I'm going to bring it up on the screen for a sec because then we can kind of follow along with you. Let's do this section again. Can you read that all right, or shall I bring it up a bit bigger?
No, hold on.
I can even
I
do
just
it. Hang on a sec. I'll do
no,
it
I
on
just
here
need.
on
Mm-hmm.
glasses, and I'll bring it up a little larger because it's all right. Here we go. Englishman. Yeah, let's do this one. So this goes from familiar in his mouth. In fact, I'm going to bring it down here so we can see it all at once. Familiar in his mouth as household words. Harry the King. What I'd like you to do is, it's just called the pointing exercise. And I want you to just literally point. Anytime a person is mentioned, I want you to point to them. And I also want you to, oh yeah, actually, let's just start with that. And it can include things like man and son, you know, and we'll go up and the band of brothers. Let's go up to, yeah, let's go from here up to the end. So from familiar in his mouth all the way to the end. And I just want you to point your way through it. And don't worry about being good, like a good actor. You can go over the top. It's okay to do the Pacino. Go big with it for a bit just to get the energy into it. And as you go through, see if you can call to mind what these people might look like.
So this is really interesting, Sarah, because when I mentioned blocking and motion, that sort of thing, this is exactly one of the things that I was thinking of is exactly reference or gesticulating towards different people in the audience as you're talking. And by the way, it's
now,
also not what?
No,
and
go
it's
ahead.
also
Yeah, sorry.
When it gets to the part about we few, like leaning in, that's intimate with these people, right? And so I think there are all sorts of things like that. So this is great. So
And I want to say what I was going to say before you begin is to, especially for people watching, that this is an exercise, and you may not keep it for performance. In fact, you probably won't keep it anywhere near on the level that you're doing it for this. It's an exercise, a process to go through to get the specificity. And then probably what you'll do as you go through your rehearsal is just pull it back a bit, because probably going like this is going to be a bit much and a bit over the top. But it's worth going to that place first, go through it and be over the top, because it will push you to get specific and it will push you to get energized with it. And then you can chill out and do less, because you'll have it in your mind ingrained. That's where Exeter is, and he looks like this, and he's covered in sweat or whatever. This is a process to bring that stuff up that you can then strip away later. So just for clarity for anybody that's kind of building it for performance or audition. Okay, well, are you happy to have a little try and just go nuts with it, really? You can be cheesy.
And also, by the way, for someone like me who is, it's been so long since I've done something like this actually on a stage where I am moving around in limited blocking. I mean, I think this is more fine-tuned blocking than what you typically, what frequently happens. But I think it's a way to break through the just the nervousness and the being anal retentive and that sort of thing, and allowing it to really flow. So
I think that's a really good point. Absolutely, because we can freeze. I think a lot of the time we freeze, and especially if you are in a confined space, like working on Zoom or doing a self-tape, we can end up feeling very restricted, and a lot of energy can get frozen in us. So I highly recommend, if you do have the space, even if it's not for performance, wander around the living room and just go nuts and do it in 360. It actually really helps build up the energy, imagining that there's also people behind you. But let's say for now, let's just stay seated and do what you can where you are.
Familiar in his mouth as household words: Harry, the King, Bedford and Exeter, Warwick and Talbot, Salisbury and Gloucester, be in their flowing cups freshly remembered. This story shall the good man.
Rob, sorry to cut you off. Would you
No,
mind
no.
doing that from there again? Could you do Bedford and Exeter? I don't know if you had them in one spot. Can you do them quite far apart, just for now, to slow them down? You might not be able to see me very soon. Slow it down even more. Bedford and Exeter, like really take your time a little more with these. Yeah.
Yep. Familiar in his mouth as household words: Harry, the King, Bedford and Exeter, Warwick and Talbot, Salisbury and Gloucester, be in their flowing cups freshly remembered. This story shall the good man teach his son. Something like that.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Let's keep going, and let's play around with if you remember, we inertia. Yeah, keep going. And let's say that anytime you have the word we or he, for example, brother, there's still lots of people, gentlemen, his. Can you keep pointing even on those personal pronouns and point to different people? We, this person, he, this guy, can you keep playing with it? So keep going from there. This story shall the good man teach his son. Yeah.
This story shall the good man teach his son. And Crispin shall never go by from this day to the ending of the world, but we in it shall be remembered. We few, we happy few, we band of brothers. For he today that sheds his blood with me shall be my brother, be he ne'er so vile. This day shall gentle his condition, and gentlemen in England, now abed, will think themselves accursed they were not here, and hold their manhoods cheap, whiles any speaks that fought with us upon St. Crispin's day.
Yeah, it's awesome. I think it's such a good exercise, but I want to point out, because it is such a balance, that of course in performance we can't labor every word like that. I'm sure you know this, Robin, but just for anybody that's watching, in the actual result, by the end, if you're doing an audition or you're doing a show, you're probably not going to be going, he asked, because there are so many words for us to stress. It's unlikely that we're going to always be stressing those kind of words, and we will have to find the flow. So let's see if we can find the balance now, because it is a journey, right, of picking it apart and then piecing it back together and finding balance. So I want to drive through a little bit through the lines. Let's try. Oh, and I just want to let you know, you don't have to pronounce the ED on this one. It's just a cursed. It will flow with the rhythms. Yeah. So let's go through and let's go from this story. Let's go from this story again and go through to the end. I want to go now to see if we can get a little bit of the color that you've created. You've just pulled it apart to get the we and the he and all that sort of thing. I want to see if we can still kind of keep a little of that, but we're going to flow through the lines, and I'm going to give you a physical exercise to do it. Again, this wouldn't be in performance, but it's just to get your body involved. I want you to do a sweeping gesture for every line, and you can do different words, and have to go through the length of the line. So, for example, this story shall the good man teach his son. Does that make sense? And so you're going to sweep across as you speak to them for every line.
This story shall the good man teach his son, and Crispin shall ne'er go by from this day till the ending of the world, but we in it shall be remembered. We few, we happy few, we band of brothers. For he today that sheds his blood with me shall be my brother. Be he ne'er so vile, today shall gentle his condition, and gentlemen in England, now abed, will think themselves accursed they were not here, and hold their manhoods cheap, whiles any speaks that fought with us upon St. Crispin's day.
Yeah, cool. I want to go through that again, and I'm going to be even more specific about it. I want you to really stick with, and it's probably going to feel it will feel probably quite fake, and that's okay. I want you to go one sweeping gesture per verse line, so not the sentence. So I don't want you to run through any, for example, I don't want you to go from this day to the ending of the world, but we in it shall be remembered. That would be the 2 verse lines. I want you to go every single verse line. I want you to go like this. So that would be from this day until to the ending of the world, but we in it shall be remembered. But where am I to go? We few, we happy few, we band of brothers. So every single one has a full gesture for the whole thing. And you probably will feel like a ballet dancer or something for a minute. But just go into the technicality of it for a second to check out where the verse lines finish. I hope that makes sense. But if you have any questions about that.
Sure.
Yeah.
And this story shall the good man teach his son, and Crispin shall ne'er pass by from this day to the ending of the world, but we in it shall be remembered. We few, we happy few, we band of brothers, for he today that sheds his blood with me shall be my brother. Be he ne'er so vile, today shall gentle his condition, and gentlemen in England, now abed, will think themselves accursed they were not here, and hold their manhoods cheap, whiles any speaks that fought with us upon St. Crispin's day.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. So you can keep, this is something that you can keep playing around with, especially when there are times where he will split his sentence across a couple of lines, right? And this is, we were talking about this applying to different poems and poets. This is something that you can play around with a lot, is driving towards the end of the verse line, really making a big deal out of the end of the line. And there's lots of different ways you can do it. And I usually encourage people to do it in a physical way because it will really help your body understand what it is you're trying to achieve. One way of doing it is kind of, doing this. But also you can do things like a gesture. And in fact, let's do a little bit of this at the beginning. Yeah, let's start from the beginning here. What's it with the toe? I want you to do a gesture, and let's just start with a little bit of a punch of some sort on the last word or couple of words of each line. So we've got, you might want to do wishes, for example, because that's more, oh yeah, you could do so. It's up to you. You've got cousin, or you could do fair cousin if you want to do it on both. Enough, live, honor, more, gold, etc. Does that make sense? So doing some sort of emphasis on that. So for example, what's he that wishes so? My cousin Westmoreland, no, my fair cousin. If we are marked to die, we are enough to do our country loss. And if to live, the fewer men are of honor. Is that clear?
We'll
Yeah.
find out.
We'll find out. Well, that's it. We will, won't we? Just give it a try. And again, don't worry if it feels fake. It's not to be realistic right now. It's to find emphasis and flow.
What's he that wishes so? My cousin Westmoreland? No, my fair cousin. If we are marked to die, we are enough to do our country loss. And if to live, the fewer men, the greater share of honor. God's will, I pray thee, wish not one man more.
Yeah.
By Joe.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah. Yeah. So what happens with that? And I think you can go further with it, especially because we're talking about embodiment. I would encourage you, so I would put this on your homework list, is to wander around the room and actually really go into it. And I think you're being pretty relaxed about the gestures. I would want do more. I think perhaps the Pacino thing might be scaring you a little bit from really going into it as far as you can. So I'm going to actually show you what it would look like if I'm wandering around doing this kind of thing for myself at home. If you can see me, it's like I will really go over the top with it. My cousin Westmoreland, no, my fair cousin, if we are marked to die, we are enough to do our country's loss. And if to live, and I'm really, really getting my whole body involved as much as I can, because it will affect my voice and it will affect what I know I'm capable of. And then I scale it back down later. If we try and be too chill in the beginning of the process, it will end up flat. So that's what I'd say for you, as you don't have to do it now, but I reckon this is something that's going to help you throw yourself into it a bit more. Is just go over the top, be bigger, bigger, bigger. Let's do a tiny bit. I want to do a little tiny bit more. Let's do this section here by Joe by I'm Not Covered Us for Gold up to alive. I'll just separate that for a sec. And I'm going to get you to actually punch the air at the end of the line. So just on these words: gold, cost, where, desires, honor, alive. Just punch the air on those words.
By Joe, I am not covetous for gold, nor
Yeah,
care
really,
I
really
the...
punch. That's very gentle. I want you to, if you can, unless is it gonna, you don't have an
No,
injury
no,
or
no.
anything. Okay, go further. Go bigger, bigger. Yeah, stronger, stronger.
I'm old, but I can still do that.
I just put it, because you never know.
No, no,
Sometimes
no.
people are like, I've got a shoulder injury, and they haven't told me about it. I go, okay, well, don't do it if you've got a shoulder injury. But no, if you can, then go further.
you know, by the way, something else that occurred to me as I was uh, taking attempts at this afternoon,
Yeah,
was that incorporating all that actually um, helps you remember the lines. If you
100%.
actually you get your body into it and so on, then you
Yeah,
feel where you're
yeah,
supposed to go next,
that's it. Exactly.
rather than
And
just remembering words.
exactly, exactly. And one of the things that this will do when we do this kind of thing where we're really actually doing quite a big action on the end of the line, it often forces you to take a natural breath leading into the next line. So you'll actually start to naturally breathe with the line because you're using up that energy and breath that you have. Like by going like this, it will kind of expel all the air and then you'll go, okay, I'm going to do a nice big breath, at the end of the line or at the beginning of the line, depending on how you think about it. And it will naturally help you shape things. So, yeah, it's a little trick as well. Absolutely. Yeah, that's
By the
awesome.
way, it also occurred to me that if you had two people doing a scene reading together, both doing this, um, it's just much more exciting to them.
Yeah.
There's much more opportunity to feed on the energy of the other person too.
Absolutely. That's another thing that really I tell people a lot with monologues is work on a monologue with a partner, even though it's a monologue. It's so difficult. Monologues are so tricky to work on because it really is us having to be our own cheerleader and our own motor. And that is hard. And one of the things, and particularly if you have the option, well, actually, let's do that. You know what? You get the idea about the making the gesture. What I want to do for a second, I'm gonna heckle you. I'm gonna heckle you, and you're gonna have to talk over me. All right. So don't let me. Let's go from the beginning. And I can't remember about the cue line. I should have got the cue line for it. But let's just say I'm gonna just yell out things like I want to go home. And you're going to come across me with what's he that wishes so. And I'm going to try and yell at you throughout this. Let's go up to a live. I'm going to try and yell at you, and you're going to shut me down. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So
Why not?
I'll start off with a bit of heckling. All right. So and so you can talk to me. If you've got. I'll bring that a little closer. Okay. Let's give up. Let's go. This is ridiculous. This is a fake
What's he that
war. Why?
wishes so? My cousin Westmoreland? No, my fair cousin, if we are marked to die, we are enough to do our country loss. And
I don't
if
want
to
to
live,
die. I don't want
that
to
fewer men the
die.
greater share of honor. God's will, I
Honor.
pray thee, wish not for one man more. God's
I
will.
I
By
don't care
Jove, I
about
am not
honor.
covetous for gold, nor care I who doth feed upon my cost. It yearns me not if men my garments wear. Such
Easy
outward
for you to
twain,
say.
well, not in my desires, but if it be a sin to covet honor, I am the most offending soul alive. No, faith, my cousin, wish not a man from England. God's peace I would not lose so great an honor as one man more, methinks, would share from me for the best hope I have. Oh, do not wish one more, rather proclaim it, Westmoreland, through my host, that he hath no stomach to this fight. Let him depart. Um, his
That's great.
passport,
Oh,
it's
sorry.
really, Sarah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, how did you feel with it? Did that kind of give you that spark?
I, it's just, it's really fascinating what it can do in terms of how much energy you're putting back into it, much more than before, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. I say with monologues, they have no but energy. You know how we always talk to yes and in drama. It's like yes and yes and monologues are no but. They're really like they're a shutdown energy because you are having to claim that space. And I think that that's what people often forget because they think, oh, everyone just shushes when I speak. Realistically, no. In a production, the chances are that there's going to be noise, you know, that a director will probably direct the other people, the cast, to shout or to try and cut you off. And I feel very lucky that I worked with a director like that when I was starting out, and he used to always get other people to interrupt us. And I've always kept that memory, because there's nothing like it. Having that feeling of having to fight for your ground, it really will motivate you and help you understand the urgency. And that was gorgeous. I loved that. And I want to add one thing, because I'm thinking about particularly this section in the middle that can sort of trip people up a bit. I think one of the things we're thinking about through this middle section is this repetition of Crispin, and how he starts to vary. Sometimes he says Crispin, sometimes he says Crispian. Why is he doing that? What's the deal? And I think just to plot for people that a lot of it's rhythmic. And this is quite a regular speech in terms of the iambic pentameter. For those that are familiar, this feeling of dee-dum, 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 dee-dum. He has this ease with it that actually pretty much all the lines are fairly regular. This day is called the Feast of Crispian. You know, you can actually feel the bottom. It's the horses running, you know. And so we have to really clock when is it Crispian and when is it Crispin, because it will change the flow. It will actually change the rhythm of it. And that's a technical thing, but unfortunately what's a bit tricky about it is that it's kind of boring. It can be boring because we're repeating this word over and over. So maybe just to let's do this section. This day is called, just to kind of finish us off for our work today. Could you go through this section for me, Robin? And every time you say Crispian or Crispin, can it be more important each time or more exciting each time? So we'll use it like a ladder. And by the time we get to this one, really, that will be probably the peak of it. And that's kind of like summing it up a little.
Yeah. It's interesting, by the way, this thing about the different ways that he says it and so on. It reminds me in a way of the By Jove and God's peace and
yeah.
all of the religious epithets that are tossed in there, and they're all different. And it's just it's a challenge.
That's a good one to actually. That's a great thing that you've mentioned. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I want to just throw this out there as a little tool for people. Yeah, you're absolutely right. These are swear words, essentially, you know, and they are religious, but they're kind of function like a polite swear word in a way, because they didn't really fully swear. So this is about as close as it gets, particularly on Elizabethan stage, to say these words. It's an oath, right? So one of the things that will help people, and maybe we won't do it on this call, but just clocking it for the future. One of the things that can help is to pop a little swear word of your own in there as a substitution when you're working on it. And it could be as soft as you like. So you could say something like, "For Pete's sake, I pray thee, wish not one verse more," you know. For goodness sake, I'm not covetous for gold, you know, or you might even say something like, "For the love of God, I am not covetous for gold," depending on how you think. But those are the choices that you can make. And as you say, they are all different. So you can start to decide, well, what would the equivalent be for me? A softer kind of oath or a stronger one? And this gives it a realistic feeling. It doesn't have to feel like we're praying all the time. It's our own way of swearing / calling from assistance from on high in the way that people do when they say something like Jesus Christ, or you know, that's it. It can be just something that people say, or it can actually be a call for help. So that's something that you can also color with your own opinions and make it feel real for you. So I won't get you to do that one today, because it's the sort of thing that can sometimes be a bit touchy for people. So I'll let you and people watching do it on their own. But let's do a bit of does that surprise you, that information? The swearing?
No, no, again, it relates to the thing that people say when you're trying to learn a monologue. One of the things that you should do is write it
Write it
all
down.
in the vernacular, so that
Yeah.
it's you have a sense in your own words of the flow and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so just
Absolutely.
even I can imagine, by the way, how it would turn out if this alteration was done by Samuel L. Jackson.
Well, that's it. I actually think this is a wonderful gift that we can give ourselves. Is if you are, I actually enjoy swearing, so I would probably be more towards the Samuel L. Jackson only for my rehearsal, at home by myself. But it personalizes it, and 100%. I always tell people, put it in your own words, put the whole thing in your own words, and that's where people often struggle because they go, well, I don't know what's the equivalent of God's will. Well, what is it for you? What do you say when you stub your toe? What do you say when you're mad at your partner? All those sorts of things. That's the sort of thing that you can throw in there and it will start to feel more realistic. Yeah, 100%. Okay, well, let's have a go
Also
at this
like, by
one
the
that we'll go
I
ahead.
also like, by the way, what you said about it's in a way it's asking for help, um,
Yeah.
um, from from on high, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
just frustrating dealing with the here and the now, and how intractable that is. Can't somebody, for God's sake, please give me a
Yeah.
hand here?
Yep, absolutely. And reminding them as well. And you can kind of play it in different ways. You could play it very religious or you could play it a bit more rough. One of the things that you can notice here is that he's got so many of those at the beginning, and then he kind of calms down a little bit and he's becoming, at this point, isn't he, there's more of the kind of the orator coming through. And one of the things, just again for people that are working on this, that one of the things that's tricky about this monologue, right, is that it all feels so epic and it can get stuck on one level. So what I would say to people is to play around with, definitely section it up, and you do get a sense of these different sections. Section it up and play around with how you can find the shape of it. And I would say this is an unusual one because it's so long. It actually, I would probably try what I sometimes call a start with a bang style. And a start with a bang basically means you come in hot, and it often is when you're responding to something. Coming in very hot at the start of a monologue and then finding a point. It's usually sooner, but I think this actual one stays hot for quite a while. So I would probably stay hot for quite a bit. And then the problem with the start with the bang monologue is that a lot of people just stay on that hot level the whole time. What you need to do is find a time to pull it back. And I would say this is the time that it pulls back. It pulls back and then it rebuilds. You'd have to play around with it. And off the top of my head, I wouldn't have answers about that. But that's what I would put on if you're working on this piece, Robin, or anyone that's watching, put that on your homework list as well, is playing around with where do I pull back? Where do I rebuild? What is truly the highest point of this monologue? And for this monologue, it may be that this is the highest point of the monologue, the most intense. Maybe not. You have to sort of think about where do I drive to? Where is my final peak? Yeah, it's a tricky monologue in that way. But because I'm just mindful of time, let's do that exercise and see if we can build this ladder. And so start off quite chill at the start here, Robin, and then every time you get to Crispin, let's see if we can go even more up. Imagine that this is the whole monologue. So by the end of it, you're going to be, then shall our names is going to be a real peak for us.
This day is called the Feast of Crispian. He that outlives this day and comes safe home will stand a tiptoe when the day is named and rouse it at the name of Crispian. He that shall live this day and see old age will yearly on the vigil feast his neighbors and say, tomorrow is Saint Crispin. Then will he strip his sleeve and show his scars and say, these wounds I had on Crispin's day. Old men forget, yet all shall be forgot. But he'll remember with advantages what feats he did that day. Then shall our names, familiar in his mouth as household words, and on and on.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. Sorry, I don't know if did I put that full stop there? Or was that a typo? Okay, that's fine. Yeah, beg your pardon, that's a bit of an unusual place to stop. Yes, great. So what I would do as a little bit of an exercise for this sort of thing, sometimes what I do for myself is I literally just give it numbers and I section it all up into little pieces just so I can track as I perform. Okay, I want this to be like let's say a 3 out of 10. And I want this to be a 4 out of 10 in terms of my energy levels, and then that's my 5. And then I'm going to get here and that's a 6. And then, when I get to where shall I go? Let's say this is a 7, for example, right? So then I start to track, okay, well, how much am I building? I pretty much never do a 1 because 1 is like I'm sitting at a cafe and I'm very chill. So I want at least a 3, which is I'm having an animated conversation at the dinner table. So I do this just to kind of track, and sometimes you get, okay, well, that's nice, but what if I end up going, well, this is an 11 out of 10? Well, that's a good indication, of where you need to be, because this might be 8. Oh, I beg your pardon, clicking on something. 8, that might be a 9, and that might be a 10, for example. But that's how I play with, does this feel right? And I go through it very technically. I would just run through it and probably just get louder, to be honest, and just go, okay, here's my 3. And then by a 10, I'm yelling. And if I do that and it feels like rubbish, then I go, okay, that's not right. Maybe I actually need to jump back here. Maybe that needs to sort of pull back. Maybe I don't like it being a 10 at the end. So that's how I would start to explore that. And that's something you can do as well, Robin. But just because I'm mindful of time, I'm going to jump out of the chair here and ask, do you have any questions, Robin, or anything that you want to clarify or try before we wrap up?
This was just awesome, Sarah. I absolutely loved it. Thank you so much. Just so much wisdom and so on. For what it's worth, by the way, just for your information, on my copy on my computer in the Word document, I have all of the sections already divided that way. And I have color coded them
Great.
in a way,
Yeah.
partly because, as someone once said to me, that's a bite, those
a bite.
8 lines.
I like that. A bite. Yeah.
And so sometimes when you have something that has all of these involved pieces and so on, it helps to be able to know where the bite is and where,
yeah.
And again, to just in terms of memorization and all that sort of thing. But I think, again, just in terms of a very non-obvious subtlety to number these sections in terms of what's the intensity and so on. And I have also, italicized some phrases and sentences and all of that sort of thing. But so it's getting at very much the same thing. I think it's great.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think there's many paths inwards. You can do it in so many different ways. I think color coding is great. I think I often used to do that sort of thing, and some people like to do actioning. Like this section is to coax, to flirt, or whatever. And they do the different type of actions per section. I think one of the things that I am very focused on with the sectioning and with monologues particularly is that it needs to drive to learning what is the journey. right? And that sometimes when we just kind of break it up into pieces and we go, you know, this feels soft and this feels strong or whatever, or this feels you know, like it's to coax or whatever, we forget that it's part of a whole. And that sometimes, because I've seen people do this, and that's why I don't do a lot of actioning, is because I think that ultimately it just ends up, people end up playing moments instead of playing a journey. And it's really important to think about journey. So that's the thing that you could even do next. It's the thing that I often suggest people do is to put the connecting thought between the sections. What is the bridge that brings you from this idea, you know, that bite to the next bite, as you say? So, because there will always be, and with Shakespeare, sometimes it can be quite a big bridge. It can be a leap, you know, or sometimes the characters think in zigzag, and it's not always apparent how did they get from this idea to this. This monologue is quite reasonable. It's sequential. It's building on an idea because it's that kind of orator stuff. But thinking about, well, what is he thinking in between? Because that also gives that layering of it, especially in the beginning when he's saying, by Jove, I'm not covetous for gold, that sort of thing. There must be a thought there that makes him say that line. What makes him think about the gold particularly? You know, is it something that someone's doing or saying or looking like, and you know, or how is it his thought is, how do I explain this to these people, for example? So giving the detail in between the sections can really help that build of the story as well. But I'm afraid I've got to wrap up. So I'll what I'll do is I'll sign off for the people that are watching, and Robin, we can say goodbye after I sign off here, and we can so just hold on for a tick, and I'll wrap us up here. So thank you for those that have watched and come along for the journey. This is such an awesome speech, and we hope that these things that have helped you out. And Robin, thanks for being thanks for sharing your work vulnerably. I was going to say thanks for being the guinea pig, but it doesn't sound a bit rough. So thank you for sharing your work vulnerably, and
It was my pleasure.
and signing off for everybody that's watching. Thanks for joining us. All the best. See you all soon.